Hi there, guys. I'd just like to have a little little chat on a book I did about 18 months ago, which was this Dominic Negus, Into the Light, and it was forward by Ricky Hatton. Anyone who doesn't know who Dominic Negus is, where do I start? I'd first heard of him. I first heard of him as a cruiserweight. I used to read the British boxing news, and he was just a kind of name. He was just a cruiserweight, shall we say, kind of southern area level. And I think Dominic first came to the spotlight around mid 2002 when he was placed against Audley Harrison. Obviously, Audley Harrison was an Olympic. I suppose at the time he was supposed to be the next big thing. He was this unbeaten Olympic champion. Everyone had this. He was tall. He was southpaw. He could fight. He was untested basically. And Dominic put on was it 6 rounds, 8 rounds? Put on a great fight, but I think the biggest talking point in that fight was Audley, second round, I think it was, or third round, can't remember. Basically, puts Dominic down. Dominic takes a knee. Audley, if you have a look now on YouTube, Audley Harrison walks away, and then can be seen to come back and basically just give Dominic, why I suppose kick a man while he's down, and he give him his best, shall we say? And the thumbnail I've used for this video is a very angry looking Dominic reacting to that punch when he was being hit. Dominic basically didn't live the life of the boxer. After that fight, he tested positive for a banned substance. I can't bullshit, or I can't dress it up in that book. In Dominic Negus' words, he cheated. And to quote Dominic, if he'd have won that fight, which it was a great performance, by the way, but if he'd have got the decision, he wouldn't have deserved it because he cheated. He basically, I think one of his fights was before Audley. He was 14 something, and when he fought Audley, he was something like, bearing in mind this was 3 months later, he was like 17.5 stone. To quote Dominic again, I was like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger. I had bumps on top of bumps. So that rightfully got Dominic a ban. I can't remember, 2 years or something like that, which at the time, I think Dominic would have only been around 30, 31. So he basically should have really served his time and took his punishment. But he decided to journey in the world of unlicensed boxing, which he basically became a bit of a legend, to be quite honest, down there. I can't remember how many fights he has, 36, something like that. I think he literally lost 1 or 2. And the book, when I first met Dominic, I met him in Glasgow years ago, and I met him in Leeds in a hotel. When was this? It was the day Josh Warrington fought Lee Selby, so I met him in the Hilton Hotel, and to be honest, look at him. There's the back. Right, that's him with his beloved daughter Annabella. And you don't need to read the small print to, he's 6'2", big, bald, and the clue's in the name, I suppose. He looks like, sorry if you're watching this, Dominic, but some would describe you as a Neanderthal who's just discovered fire. That I got to know a different person, a deeper person. You certainly wouldn't want to argue with it. You wouldn't want to argue with him, but there's much more deeper than that. There's just different layers. And once I spent about 5 days in his house. I even lived to tell a tale after throwing up in his front garden, which he very kindly let me off with. But Dominic, there's many different layers to him. You think, big angry kind of guy, or supposedly like this. When you see all the fighters over the years, the big fight, I'm talking about your James DeGale, George Groves, Tony Bellew, Nathan Cleverly. Dominic's the guy in the middle who's kind of keeping the fighters apart, and he's had such a big life. I mean, he had a lot of opportunities, and by Dominic's own words, he said, "I blew it because I was a prat." One job he was offered was to be Conor McGregor's bodyguard, and he was doing. He basically, in my opinion, right, I mean, Dominic sparred with, there was a world champion called Darius, I forgot the name, and basically they paid him for sparring partner and for 2 weeks, and after a day or two they said, "Here, you're obviously fucking mad, mate, we don't need sparring like you," and that was a world champion. In my opinion, I think if Dominic Negus had really knuckled down in boxing, not as a heavyweight, as a cruiserweight, I think he could have been, Steve Bunn says, a contender. I think he could have been like a European champion. Certainly with All Day being like a British champion. Dominic sparred with Lennox Lewis. He's been around some really, really big name camps, and the book is not what you think. You look at him and you realise, I think I sum him up as basically a little boy in a man's body. You've got this kind of big, scary 6'2", heavily built man, but at the same time you've got this emotionally damaged little boy. Dominic says in the book, he says that his weakness was his strength, or was it the other way around? He said it, where people have used him. Has he been manipulated? Has he been, he's done dirty work. And there was a time in Dominic's life when there was no job too small, and he just wanted to be the baddest man in London, and I know the London Metropolitan Police just do a desperate to put him away, and he has actually had I know there was one charge hanging over his head, and it was like double figures, rest of your life in one's worth prison. But he could either stay in that world and be used and abused. One thing about Dominic is, if you're his friend, you're his friend for life. He's very loyal. I picked that up quite a bit. He's he's happy if you're in his little circle of friends. A lot of people have took the piss out of him, for obvious reasons. And when he's been down, when he's been suicidal, no one called him. Nobody rang him. One of the saddest. I'm not gonna go into the book because obviously I want you to buy it. Forward by Ricky Hatton, Into the Light, Dominic Negus, with Amazon best-selling author Jamie Boyle, which is a War Cry production. It's $9.99 from Waterstones, eBay, Amazon. And if there's any greedy bastards out there who basically want to read it for half price, it's $4.95 from Amazon via Kindle. But one of the saddest stories in there was, I think it was Christmas Day, and basically Dominic had split up from his missus or something, and he was living in a gym. And I think he was spent Christmas Day on by himself with a bottle of Jack Daniels, and he was just sat there thinking, I think his mother had quite recently passed, and he was just sat low, and he was just looking up, thinking, I wonder if that beam would take my weight. That's very sad and scary. Imagine to be in that frame. We've all been down. I suffer from the correct term is a personality disorder, and I've probably been as low as without being as suicidal. But when you like that, and don't listen, it's in the book. Dominic did do a few silly things, which he's not proud of, and he certainly won't be doing them again. But I believe there was a little girl called Annabella Negus, who saved Dominic from early death, a life in prison, and she probably saved a lot of other people as well. There was this. He couldn't go around behaving like a prat when he had this little girl to look after and provide for. And he's a deep thinker, Dominic. You don't have to be. I know I was chatting with my wife today, and I said, when I met him, he got up and he's like this big bear, right? He might be scary, but he's this kind of big. He's got a lot of love in him. And she said, something? She said, I've never been cuddled like that before. Oh, so I'm thinking, there's something more to that, like. I was like, Dominic. Yeah, but he said no. I said he's just a guy who's, he's been down on his luck. The book, listen, he's. I mean, there's a few people in the book. Ricky Hatton's right hand man, Mike Jackson's in. Who else is Mickey Theo, who's the guy who's going back and forward with John Fury. Essex bodybuilder, something he's in. There's there's a few. I know there's a few. I've got a few quotes from Steve Bunce. He rated him incredibly highly, but he had, how could Steve put it? He had toes in each camp. You can't be this professional athlete getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, living, and then you can't be knocking debt collecting people's doors, loosening people's teeth at 9 o'clock on the night, Dominic's had his own demons. To be quite honest, he's been ravaged. He's this big, he's a big scary looking guy, but, he's quite, let's be honest, I wouldn't want to get caught stealing his milk from his doorstep, but you've got to look deeper with him. And I think I've spent a bit of time with some of his really close friends in Essex. I spent about 5 days with him, and he's just a big teddy bear. I'll read you synopsis, the blurb on the back. Into the light, Dominic Negus. Many of us crucify ourselves between two thieves, regret for the past and fear for the future. Dominic's life so far has been a rollercoaster, to say the least. There's been fights, threats, love, loss, angels of axes, and some of Dominic's biggest fights have been with himself. But the last chapters of his life have yet to be written yet, and only Dominic holds a pen. Into the Light. Yeah, it's only about 18 months old, guys. It's, I'm cut a long story short. Dominic's had a few issues that he's had to what's the word Dominic would use, iron out. I kept Dominic's East End accent in that. So in that, if you're reading, it'd be like saying, yeah, he mugged me off. I need to iron him out. He mugged me, and who does he think he is? He's taking liberties and all this, as Dominic speaks. But he's a very well-liked person, is Dominic. I had the privilege of speaking to Ricky Hatton and a few other people. Barry Jones, ex-former world champion, and wherever I kind of had a chat with, like around the boxing fraternity, they all kind of had great love for him. Probably apart from Audley Harrison, who just blanked my messages basically. But I didn't really ask why. But listen, Dominic, he seems to have got the bug for life again. He seems to be back on the up. And I had a chat this morning with the venerable Sean Atwood, who I basically sold Dominic. If you're watching Dominic, I pimped you out and I said, listen, I've got this guy. I've done this book on him. He's been a bit quiet, but, you know, he was once upon a time on Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men. What else? He had his own documentary, Britain's Underworld. And basically, you know, I get slated sometimes very, very wrongly because people think I write these books and I glamorise them. I don't. This is a guy who could have had so much more in life, but fucked everything up because because he wanted to be the champagne Charlie. He wanted to be the lad. You know, it's never really been a womanizer. He was always a one-man woman. But the opportunities were there, and he's been around it all. The sex, drugs, rock and roll, Essex world, and it's not glamorous. You know, it might be at the time in the nightclubs in the moment when you know Dominic's been friends, I suppose, with everyone, your Roy Shaws and all this, and you know when he's had his bouts of depression, when you've got this big scary guy, and to the point where Dominic has actually been scared of his own shadow, just wrapped up in bed, just crying. And he's a very complex character, but he's one of the most genuine people I've come across in doing the books. And yeah, you know, listen, I can't pretend I knew what kind of world he lived in the past, but I think if there was certainly, you know, I mean, there was a lot of acts of extreme violence he's been involved with, but a lot of them were kind of sticking up for his friends. You know, as Dominic always says, I don't like people taking a liberty. You know, I think maybe if you read this, you might come out with a bit of a Cockney twang, the apples and pears, jelly deals, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, Dominic, if you're watching this, brother, I'm glad that everything's looking back up for you, and I don't think this book has really had the. I think it deserved a bit better. I think it's underrated, and yeah, it probably wasn't ideal that your head fell off just as we released it, and but listen, we all handled things very differently. When I had my bout of depression, I just go to bed, turn my phone off for the world. And my wife says to me sometimes, she said, you know, some people act differently. I could probably, you know, I'm probably lack a bit of empathy because I'm so wrapped up with me feeling down. I get abuse of the trolls and all this, and I'm only human. When sometimes I think, well, hang on a minute, others can get that as well, you know. So Dominic, if you're watching, I think we should give this book a push, and yeah, let's get you on Sean Atwood, let's get you on James English, let's get you on the Jimmy O show, let's get you on a few things out there, because you have got a story to tell, and it's not one for look at me, I'm harder than me, oh, you're looking at my pint. It's none of that. It's about, you know, it's how can I put it without being disrespectful? It's quite sad, tragic how, you know, you have been used. The potential you had, you know, when you've bashed people up in the gyms, and you know you never put that energy. Listen, I mean, you work like I'm not going to say the word, but it says a mother, something else. This is what you said in the book, but also I was doing things outside of boxing that if you want to, I spoke to Glenn McCrory the other day, and he said if you want to be a really, really top elite fighter, you've got to tick so many boxes. And yes, listen, I don't doubt that you were out doing your running and all this, and you're in the gyms and all this, but also you were doing your skullduggery as well, and earning a pound note in a dark, seedy underworld, which really nearly got you killed. I think you call it in the book as free angels, carrying an axe, a gun, and a baseball bat. So yeah, I mean, and that's the sad statistic of that life. That's what that kind of, lots of people say, "Oh, that Jamie Boyle, he thinks he's this." I'm not. I'm a professional writer. I don't want to be somebody like that. I just want to write books, and I'm interested in kind of wacky, off the ball characters, a bit nutty, a bit crazy. A bit eccentric. And you've only got to look at some of the books I've done with you, your Paul Sykes, your Lee Duffys, your what did I say there? Roy Shaw's, and yourself. There's always kind of it always seems to be people being bullied, and then you turn into the bully, become the bullies. Dominic actually said to me, he said, something? He said, I turned into someone I didn't want to be. He said, there was like, my close friends were just saying, Dominic, I just don't want to be around you anymore. And he was just like, fucking hell. Do you know? And Dominic Negus, admittedly, he said, listen, I'd become someone I despised, and it was scary. And he's turned his life around. So, who knows what the story of Dominic Negus has got left. He could do anything he wanted. He's had the experience in the boxing world. He was, when I was down there, he had a couple of fighters. I don't know whether he still has now. He was working in security. Listen, Lenny McLean got his break by being that person. Mike Reed was in EastEnders, and he basically played himself. And Dominic, if you ever put yourself on IMDb or other way around anyway, but it's basically, if you need, I'm sure there's everyone needs a tall, bald, rough looking man to play some part in EastEnders or something. Listen, life's what you make it, mate. And if you hang around in your house and why me, and he doesn't like me, and I get it sometimes. And my wife says to me, you've got to sort yourself out, because you're like a little bitch. Or you just get up and you think, do you know what? Fuck this. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna make something of myself. And that's nothing in life comes to you. Anything in life worth doing, you've got to grab it with both hands. So, but overall, people, this was just a little video. I wanted to let Dominic know that he's still relevant, and he has a fantastic book here called Into the Light, written by Jamie Boyle, and it's very good. I should know because I've written it. Forwards by Ricky Hatton. And don't judge a book by a cover. It's not actually what you think. If you think this book's all about someone knocking 10 people out on every page, you're very much mistaken. It's about a man who has real issues in life that there's no doubt we can relate to them all. He's how can I put it? I can't put it any other way than he's mad as a box of frogs, or nutty as a fruitcake, but I mean that in the nicest possible way, Dominic. And I'm glad to know that everything's back on your brother. And people out there, get clicking on Amazon, get on Waterstones, eBay, any other platforms. Dominic Negus, Into the Light. It's had 23 Amazon reviews. I think we're on 4.5, which makes out 9. It basically works out 9 out of 10. So yeah, the readers so far have enjoyed it. And Dominic, all the best. God bless.